Did you know we have a thriving global community of like-minded ancestral home cooks and homesteaders? Every day on our Discord forum, we are discussing what we're cooking, what we're growing, what we're thinking about, what our latest struggles are, and supporting each other to fully embrace this beautiful lifestyle. As a patron member, you can also choose to access an extra private podcast feed, which includes monthly intimate chats where Andrea and I talk in depth about what's happening in our lives and kitchens. There are over 90 recordings waiting for you there right now. In addition, we've got a massive collection of inspiring and helpful downloads for you, including many recipes and videos. And once a month, you'll get to visit with myself, Andrea, and the community as we come together live and in person. Visit ancestralkitchenpodcast.com for all the details on how to join us. Come be part of our world and change yours.
What plant was allegedly first discovered in Ethiopia by a goat? Boasts an almost $270 billion market worldwide, has almost 10,000 shops dedicated to it in the UK and over 35,000 in the US, and you very likely may have partaken of sometime already today. That's right, the elixir of which Benjamin Franklin, the American statesman, author, and inventor, wrote, "Among the numerous luxuries of the table, coffee may be considered as one of the most valuable. It excites cheerfulness without intoxication, and the pleasing flow of spirits which it occasions is never followed by sadness, languor, or debility." In this episode, return guest Rob, Alison's husband, shares with me some of the history and processing of coffee, types of coffee plants even before the roasting process, sourcing, and, of course, favorite brewing methods. Top up your cup of bean juice and maybe add a little raw cream, and let's get rolling. Welcome to the Ancestral Kitchen Podcast.
I'm Alison, a European town dweller living in England.
And I'm Andrea, living on a family farm in Northwest Washington State, USA.
Pull up a chair at the table and join us as we talk about eating, cooking, and living with ancestral food wisdom in a modern world kitchen.
Well, hello. I am not sitting across, I'm not sitting across from anybody, actually, but I'm not sitting across from Alison today. I'm sitting across to Alison's counterpart, Rob. Hello, Rob.
Hi there. Hi.
How are you? And welcome to the show that you have to sit through editing all the time.
I'm fine. I'm intrigued at the possibility of causing myself annoying work by needing to edit out idiot things that I've said.
Yeah, that's the nice part for yourself. If you say something you don't like, you say, go back and take that out.
That is true. Yeah.
Just don't start coughing because you know how annoying that was when I did that one time.
Yes. Yeah, I remember that vividly.
Me too. It was horrible. Well, anyways, so Rob is here as a guest. Just weird that you're a guest because you also work on the podcast like as much as Alison and I do, but you're guesting on the show part today. So super happy to have you here. This is a topic that I have asked specifically for multiple times. And you put together a massive, I'll say, book of notes. And you're going to share today all about coffee, which I am really, really excited to hear about for myself personally. But before we start, you know what's coming. I'm going to ask you, what is the last thing you ate before we got together?
Well, it was an experimental bread of Alison's. She's been making bread from emmer flour, which she hasn't used much in the past.
Oh, yeah. She was telling me about that.
I can't remember what it's called, di cocco or something in Italy it was called. And it's it's a bit like spelt flour or einkorn flour. It's kind of somewhere between the two of them. And it's because you guys have got a new sponsor in Grand Teton, who's also they're asking Alison to write some blog posts for them that are around the topics that are around the things that they sell. And one of them is Emma flowers. So she's got a sample from them. And she's also got some Emma from somewhere locally, which is probably where we get it from long term. So she's been making tons of Emma bread. And it's very, very nice. That's all I can say about it, really. It's more wheaty than spelt flour, which is a nice change. And we had some chicken soup with that.
Ooh, yum.
And yeah, that was a chicken carcass, that was, which means that it was approximately, let's say, 3 or 4 pounds, something like that. So I don't know, like maybe $4 or $5. And it's going to feed us, like the three of us, 3 or 4 times, I reckon.
Oh, like you just bought the bones.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like leftovers, basically. And apparently, they sell a lot of them at the market, we're told, and they always run out, so we have to get there early to get them or reserve them for next time. So yeah, that's what I had.
Yeah, the chicken carcass is a great thing to be able to get your hands on because a lot of people just want like the primary muscle meat, But when we would butcher for ourselves, like a couple times we did, usually we have like a spatchcock chicken or like a half a chicken or something. But sometimes we would actually take all the meat off and like make it into sausage or something. And so then you have tons and tons of bones. I just kind of like smushed them and divided them up and froze them in batches for broth. But I can imagine if you were selling like a product and you had hundreds and hundreds of like chicken bones, it's really nice to, you can sell them for a really low price. You're still making your money off the muscle meat, but
yeah, exactly.
You're getting paid to deal with the bones, but somebody gets a thing. Yeah,
we do make stock with them as well, actually. I've ditched my first thing in the morning coffee for some stock, actually.
Oh, that'll be interesting.
I'm still drinking the coffee, but I'm just not drinking the coffee.
Okay. Confessions of a coffee drinker.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the grains, they're a U.S. supplier. So you guys, I was really impressed that they sent Alison some so she could try them. I didn't even know that they would send them overseas, but for you, they won't be
I don't think it's going to be a regular relationship like that. But it was really
good.
Good.
They're really close to me, so for me.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, you could go see them, and
I know.
It's fantastic.
I will.
And,
well, cool. Okay. Well, before we go into the coffee segment, I wanted to read this review from Bond Girl 5. It says, "Love it. Just found this podcast. Both hosts are delightful. Keep it up." I love it. And just so you know, Rob, she wasn't talking about you. She was talking about me and Alison. So
well, and also
you are yet to be seen.
The title, it says very informative, which you can't really ask for. So she's not only emotionally attached to what you're doing, but also on a practical level.
Well, I appreciate that.
So that's really cool.
It is nice that there's, me and Alison have our weird hyper focuses that we go on, and it is so gratifying that other people find it helpful and interesting, and in her words, even delightful, which I really appreciate her saying. Or
I think
on girl. So
weird hyper focus is exactly the way I would describe what we're going to talk about in a moment. And my relationship with it is pretty much it.
Which makes you a weird hyper focuser. So I don't know how that makes.
Oh yeah, well that's already that's given. When you've heard someone play the same 5.5 seconds of a song over and over again about 1,000 times until they get it right, that's a hyper focuser for you. That is.
No, that's true. That's true. We also have, thanks to you, we can actually say now, the newsletter for our podcast, which took us a minute to get up and going. I literally remember meeting Alison and I had in the very beginning where we said we should do a podcast newsletter, and then we're like, when? How? But
are you using the AI to do it? Are you using the AI to do it?
No, actually,
I wonder,
so Alison and I have. Yeah, we went through every possible idea. But what Alison and I do now is we have a system where each one of us writes one episode or one newsletter per month. So the only thing you get from us is newsletters that let you know when the podcast is coming out, when we're putting out a new episode. And we put a little bit of other stuff in there too. But it's not like we're sending a zillion messages about I don't know what, because we don't have the time. So We're not spamming you because we can't.
That's it.
We just don't have the time for spam.
That would make quite a good tagline, wouldn't it? We're not spamming you because we can't.
We don't have the time. Yeah, we'd love to, but unfortunately, we're unable. So you just get handwritten notes from Alison and I. So I think they're coming out really nicely, and I'm learning how to integrate it into my routine, which for me is always a slow process, but I'm getting there. And I don't think we have any downloads for this episode, do we, Rob? Nothing?
No, we don't. We thought about doing it in the end, you know what, but the information just works so much better spoken. There will be a bunch of links in the show notes that will give people what they need for further research.
Yeah. Sure. This is what people need, though. This is what I need. I'm people.
I tell you what, though, there will be. I mean, there's an after show. That's for sure.
Oh,
so
there's an after show. Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Definitely, you got to stick around. Baby's got to be quiet.
I got to stick around for the after show. Okay,
maybe for the after show you can. Maybe for the after show you can bring the baby in, and it won't matter.
Yeah.
They're used to you and us, and you know.
Yeah. No, that's okay. Okay, so there'll be an after show for supporters of the podcast. Yeah. Thank you for supporting us. And if you want to find out more about supporting the podcast, thank you, Rob, for building us this amazing system. We now all in-house we take care of all our own podcast business now, which is really, really just a freeing feeling. So you can go to ancestralkitchenpodcast.com/join, if I am recalling rightly. Yeah, and you can, okay, good. And you can see if you want to be a supporter of the podcast. And for those that are supporting, we just throw out so much extra stuff, which is awesome, including, it sounds like, an after show on coffee today. So, Rob, no, wait, let me say, you've been on the show before.
Yes. Alison was reminding me to remind me about it. Yeah.
So you were, well, it worked. We're here.
It worked. Yeah, we did it.
You and Alison did a show on everyday luxuries, which is one of my favorite episodes. And
there was some stuff on coffee in that as well.
There was
not anywhere near as in depth as what we've got here. But
but listening to that episode was part of why I said to Alison, do you think this is something that Rob could wax on about? And she said, certainly he could, because I felt like it's one of those things that we can just take for granted in our life, coffee, or when you can turn your eye to it and give it a little bit of attention, and then it starts to become a really beautiful, enjoyable luxury in life and be recognized as such. So I'm really excited about this episode for that reason, because I feel like a lot of people are kind of gravitating away from the pre-ground, dried up old coffee, and they're wanting to.
It's less like a beautiful treat. It's more like an addiction, basically. It's like you just feel awful if you don't have your caffeine here. So you're going to do something about it. And there's got to be more to it than that, I think.
One hopes.
For me, anyway.
Were you on the episode I gave on my iPhone, or did you?
I got a little
piece, didn't you?
I got a brief section, and I had talked about screens and EMF, and I think I may have been on that. We did an after show. I remember that.
That's what I'm thinking
on all sorts of stuff to do with technology.
So the after show on that isn't even an after show. It was like a full show, wasn't it? It was like longer. I can't remember.
No, I just think it was a ridiculously long after show. I think Alison didn't want me on the main feed, but we just carried on chatting for like an hour and a bit or something.
Well, that show on the technology, on the after show, and on I Gave Away My iPhone episode, which I'll link all these episodes in the show notes so you guys don't have to try and search them or whatever. But that was enormously helpful for me. And so anybody who has questions about, hey, maybe I work with technology, I kind of have to use a computer for my job or whatever, or you want to be able to use the computer, but you want to mitigate some of the damage or things like that. That is a really good episode. So I'll link that in the show notes. And then you and Alison also did the gaps episode. And now I'm thinking about it, you also did the show on taking charge of your own health. And so
Oh my
actually
gosh, we did, didn't we? You remember? Okay, yeah. I'd forgotten that one.
You've been on a couple
Writing this
times.
list and then, yeah, okay. Yeah, that taking charge of your own health was fun. I felt really good about that.
That's another one of my favorites.
I actually felt like I'd sort of revealed some things that maybe I wouldn't even reveal them to a close friend talking across the table. Do you know what I mean? I kind of hold those back. And because I was talking to Alison and there's nobody else in the room, I sort of I let them out over the podcast, and afterwards I thought, oh God, should I have done that? Oh.
Yeah.
Gosh, it felt
She told me
edgy,
you said, did Rob wondered if if it was too much, and I listened to it and I was like, it literally went again to the top of my list, one of my favorite episodes. I love that one. And I think it's, if somebody wants to know why am I doing this? Why do I care? And who am I to be making these decisions? I think that's a really, or if you're just trying to make decisions about your health, this is probably the boat many of our listeners are in, and you're the only person who's making calling their own shots on their health.
We all are, aren't we? That's why we're connecting online. It's really hard.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So anyways, if anybody's heard you on those, which I know many of our listeners have, then you know that this episode is about to be weird hyper-focus, lots of intense detail, and super duper interesting, and probably some sort of British snark thrown in.
Yeah, I'll edit out all my cuss words, every one of them. Yeah.
Oh, no, you use those all up setting up the chords, I'm sure.
Yeah, maybe.
You ran through your quantity.
Oh,
so where do you want to begin?
Notes, yeah. Well, okay, the coolest place to begin. While I was trying to do some research to just sort of answer some questions I never bothered to answer for myself, and to re-look up some things that maybe I looked into like a decade ago or something like that, I found that almost every website on the net on coffee starts with a little story, and I began to find that a bit boring after a while, but then I just thought, actually, it's such a good story that I just need to share it here. So we're going to do exactly the same thing as everybody else for once. And it said at the beginning of this site, according to legend, a goat herder named Kaldi was the first person who discovered coffee beans and their benefits. Kaldi noticed that after his goats ate the cherries of a particular tree in the ancient coffee forests of the Ethiopian plateau, they were so full of energy that they didn't want to sleep at night. And that says an awful lot about coffee.
Story.
It really, I mean, and it goes on to talk about how it was used for meditation, and things about how it was kind of a bit compulsive, and all the different methods of cultivating it, all the stuff we're going to go into during this episode. But that it says something about this amazing plant that, the way you discover it is by your goats eating it and they can't sleep. So we're going to talk about the types of coffee beans that you can source, and the processing methods and what they mean. We're going to talk about roasting. We're going to talk about different brewing techniques. Right at the end, stay to the end, because we're going to talk about health or not of coffee. And I can't give you any definitive answers, but can give you parameters. That's always what I do. So maybe you can make some choices around that, rather than it just being an either-or kind of thing. And then we're going to do an after show. And in that after show, we're going to talk about my own pan roasting method. And I'll just go into as much detail as I can about every little thing I do, so that when you do it, you can make your own choices and just create the pan roasting method designed around you. And that's for podcast supporters only. And also we're going to chat about some flavorings, because either using coffee as a flavor in drinks or using other flavors with your coffee just for fun. And it's so funny. It says here, episode driver says, let's go to an ad break. But this is such an unusual episode. Who's the driver? Who's going to say, let's go to an ad break?
I'll drive this episode.
I can edit this out if it's really silly. Okay, cool.
All right.
If you're into ancestral eating, you'll know that liver is a superfood. Full of vitamin A, K, and a whole host of B vitamins, plus many essential minerals, it has an exceptional nutrient profile and is a staple of traditional healthy diets. But it's not always easy to consistently get liver into our lives. Finding a good supply, cooking it so it actually tastes good, and getting all of our family to eat it. These things can be hard, especially when we're busy or travelling. That's where Andrew and I turn to liver capsules. They give us all the benefits of liver without having to worry about the sourcing, the preparation, or the eating. One Earth Health produces organ capsules from 100% grass-fed New Zealand-raised cattle. As a podcast listener, you can get 15% off your first order and 5% off subsequent orders by using the link in our show notes. And each time you order, you'll also be supporting us to continue making this podcast.
Let's go and
we're back.
Talk about coffee.
Cool. So why listen to me talking about this? Because there are there's people out there who have roasted coffee. There's people out there who have farmed coffee. There's people out there who have got a long line of patients in their practice complaining that they've got a problem with coffee. Just who am I to talk about this? Well, I'm not involved in anything professional related to coffee whatsoever. So there's no financial interest there, but also there's no qualifications, and I'm not sort of working with this daily. However, I am both completely addicted and completely obsessed. And I also, what might be of more interest to the listener is that I come to it from a very ancestral angle, in the sense that I'm suspicious of all new things. Like I question, I think, are we doing that to make money, to save time in order to make money? You know, is this a sort of a industrial thing that we're trying to make some cash out of this product? And I'm also really curious about how people did things pre-industrially, because there's often some really cool answers related to that, as I'm sure most of the listeners are aware. And those answers, it's usually gentler on your body and tastes more interesting, all the usual list of stuff. So first, let's talk about sourcing, because I guess that's where you start, really, as a consumer. Types of beans. There are two main types of beans, coffee beans, but there are some more. So the main type, the one that's the overwhelming majority of coffee worldwide, well, not overwhelming, but it's the largest proportion, it's like 60% or something, is Arabica.
Is this is this the plant? Like, is it, say, like
basically
cherry tomato or?
Literally a type of plant. Yeah, like cherry tomato. I don't know what the word is. It's not species, is it? There is a
variety,
a
maybe?
word. Variety. Yeah, variety sounds better.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
All right.
And there's subtypes as well, sub-classifications. So there is Arabica. That's like the classification for this type of coffee that is, as I say, like 60% or whatever. And it tastes the best. What can I say? It does happen to need cooler climates. And that means higher altitudes. And
really?
These places are, for whatever collection of reasons, we ain't going to unpack that one in this episode, but they're becoming more scarce. So basically, Arabica is getting harder and harder to grow year by year. And also, we're doing our usual thing that we do with all crops of all types, which is we're getting more and more focused on one particular sub-variety. So we're becoming very, very vulnerable to one of them that hit in the 19th century was leaf rust blight, you know, sort of these pathogens and bugs and things like that. We're becoming a bit vulnerable to that sort of thing. So it's a little bit under threat. And I heard recently we're using more coffee than we're growing at the moment. And that specifically means Arabica, because that's most of the coffee. We're actually using more than we're growing year on year. And so there's sort of these stores, these mountains of green coffee beans, and they're kind of going down and the price is kind of going up. And, you know, a little bit scary if you're addicted to caffeine, but it's
so
interesting.
You're like cashing in on the savings.
Well,
and it's not being replenished necessarily.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly that. And weirdly, I think the other thing, this was from the BBC. This is one that I didn't note in the notes, so we might have to dig this out to put it in the show notes. But they were saying that actually Arabica consumption is fairly steady worldwide, except China, where it's just going up. They're ditching their previous obsession with tea in favour of coffee for whatever.
No way.
Collection. Yeah, I mean, it is a bit scary, isn't it?
Wow.
Yeah. Coal, petrol, avocados, all of it. They're eating it up. So there's that. There's Robusta. This is the other major variety. And the thing about that is it's stronger. There's more caffeine in it, and it's also cheaper to grow and can survive growing in lower altitudes. So it's kind of, robust. It's a more robust crop. It's said that it doesn't taste as good. I have to say, normally that's why they make the freeze-dried coffee out of the instant coffee mostly, or they might blend it with Arabica or whatever. And cheap coffee basically is made out of Robusta. I've actually home roasted a bag of organic Robusta beans from Green. And I have to say it was quite nice. I really enjoyed it. It was a little bit bland. It was really strong.
Wow.
I'd mix it with, ideally, I think I'd mix it with Arabica just for the sake of making it a little bit more mellow and giving it a little bit more flavour. But it wasn't a bad cup, really. But I suppose that was like a posh organic grower of it. So maybe it was a very, very good Robusta. What have I written here? I preferred it to Starbucks, which is perfectly true.
That's like everything.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that probably is a mixture of Arabica
it's not
and Robusta.
really the high bar.
That's true. There's a couple of others. There's Liberica. I don't know how to do that without just using my fake Italian accent. Used to be 20% of the world's coffee in the 19th century. Now it's about 2%. And I've never tasted this one.
Drop.
Well, yeah, it is really, and it sort of speaks of what we've done to coffee. And I think we'll probably come back to this again and again through the sourcing, through the roasting, and through the brewing. Like at every step of the way, we're kind of making it into this thing that's sort of easier to mass produce, more addictive, less interesting, because it would be really interesting to try a few different varieties of coffee. But this one, I think possibly this one has got one of them has got a much larger bean. It's like about 3 times the size or something. It's this massive thing. I've never tasted this one. Apparently it's got less caffeine than Arabica, tastes somewhere between Arabica and Robusta. And interestingly, it was more robust when it came to leaf rust blight in the 19th century. It didn't affect it at all, whereas both Arabica and Robusta had a real hard time throughout that. So who knows? Yeah, maybe that will become more popular as we start looking for varieties that can survive unscathed through these things. There's another one called Excelsa, more resilient, despite having less caffeine, which might be interesting there. Although it said somewhere it's been reclassified as a subclass of Liberica. So yeah, don't know, not an expert on that. There's surprisingly little information about these things out there on the net to sort of to work on, because there are tons and tons of sub-varieties of Arabica. And there is a link there that we'll stick in the show notes where they go into a lot of detail on some of them. But it is just the case that not only are we just using Arabica, but we're actually just using like 1 or 2 of the sub varieties of Arabica. It's pretty depressing reading, really, when you get to it.
Well, we talked on one of our patron shows a while ago when we all get together on the Zoom call about bananas, and how bananas, there used to be many more. I mean, there still are varieties of banana, but there used to be many more, and how they say, like, we don't even know the taste of banana, and that they say, those banana candies, everybody's like, that doesn't taste like a banana. But apparently that's what a banana used to taste like.
Yes.
And so if you compared those bananas full of flavor to the bland bananas now, nobody would want these bland ones. But since it's the only one we know, it's the only one everybody cares for. And so I think about, you're talking about these varieties. If we got whittled down to one blander variety, nobody would know any else. There's nothing to compare it to.
Exactly.
So they'd be...
I think maybe, if there is thinking about it now, talking to you, there is a difference in coffee in the sense that it has a kind of snobbish connoisseur thing going on with it, where people like their perfect cup of coffee and they'll go for like the really interesting ones to get. There's just this set of people, probably myself included, who are really curious about an interesting cup of coffee, and that's meant that a lot of the nice ones still exist, but at the same time you've got the sort of forces of commercialism just weighing down on it, sort of whittling away to the smallest number of varieties, when there were so many, and there still are. Really, they're not cultivated commercially, and probably are dying out as a result of not. The places where people would have grown them, they don't bother growing them anymore. They're better off growing something they can make money out of that's more consistent.
Oh, yeah.
Other considerations when you're buying pesticides. There's the list of chemical contaminants in large-scale produced coffee is truly terrifying. It really is. Okay,
I don't know anything about this. So could you, I've heard a little bit, but I don't really know. I couldn't tell you anything about it.
So, it is like farmers who are doing it on a smaller scale, they're less likely to need the pesticides in the same way. And organic coffee growers, obviously, they're not allowed to. And so it does, I think, looking at that, it feels a lot nicer not to be just drinking a cup of concentrated pesticides. I don't understand the science behind how dangerous they are or they aren't, these pesticides, but if I can avoid having them, I think I probably will. And the interesting, it's normally the nicer coffees that wouldn't have pesticides in them anyway, so that's a kind of win-win situation as far as I'm concerned.
They use them in the growing, in the processing, or both?
In the growing. Yeah. We'll talk about the processing methods. There are processing methods you might want to avoid getting involved with, but pesticides, it's just the farming basically. Right. And then, when you're buying them, actually, here we go. Here's another link that I haven't put here in these notes, but might be a good idea. I once for a while I did a few orders from a grower in Uganda who I was on what was then called Twitter, and I said something about coffee, and they were just messaging everybody who said something about coffee, saying you can buy your coffee beans direct from us. We're an organic producer. And
really,
Mount Elgon or something like that. I can't remember. I'll put that in there for the show notes.
Is that the one you were getting in Italy?
Yeah, exactly. And I got it from them a few times. I couldn't find anywhere to get green beans in Italy. Just wherever I asked them, they're like, oh, no. Probably if I'd have been Italian and I'd asked a coffee roastery, can I get green beans? They'd have been fine with it. But they weren't having it with me. Later on, I did find places to get it in Italy. But yeah, as I say, I was buying direct from this grower, and I was having to get, the quantities I was having to buy were just kind of a bit too much, but it was very good, I must admit, and consistently really high quality. But the other thing you can do is you can find a local roastery, and provided they're sourcing organic beans, or, they describe the farming conditions of the beans to your satisfaction, you can usually ask them and get some green coffee beans off of them and get them roasted yourself. Or if you ask them about how they're roasting, you can buy what they've roasted. And we'll talk about the differences there between roasting it yourself and getting them from a local roastery. I've been ordering them from somewhere in Monmouth, which is near where we are. It's in Wales, so just over the border from us. And they do really, really good coffee, and every time I order green beans from them, I order a few of their packets that they roast, and I would say overwhelmingly the difference is that their roasting is more efficient than mine. So when I first have it, it's like this fantastic kind of caffeine hit drug, and it's wonderful. And it's lovely to have really dark coffee as well, because they can roast it darker without burning it than I can. But then after a while, I just get thoroughly fed up with it and I want my own roasted back, partly because I get some sort of lovely pan roasted flavors from it, and partly because my roasting is less efficient, and so it doesn't have the same levels of caffeine in it. And so it's nice to have something that's a bit less addictive. It's more like halfway between a tea and a coffee, honestly, what I drink most of the time, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, I'm interested in learning a little bit about that in the after show too, because I have heard that if you buy the green beans, you can store them, and
you can.
Kind of nice to be able to,
true.
Just have to have batches. So, is there anything else you want to cover on that section, or should we take a quick break and then go to the processing methods? What do you think?
I think we'll take that break.
Hey, you washing the dishes. Been there. You've heard Alison and I talk over and over about her love of rye sourdough bread. Well, I might actually call it an obsession, but that's neither here nor there. Now you can make Alison's rye sourdough in your own kitchen with her as your teacher. And she's a really good teacher. Rye is economical, it's delicious, and full of nutrients and low in gluten. There's a reason why it has been a darling of bread bakers for centuries. Make it into sourdough, as Alison will show you in her course, Rye Sourdough Bread, Mastering the Basics. And you've got an amazing, tasty, and nutritious staple in your kitchen. It's traditional and it's nutritional. In this course, you'll learn everything there is to know about how she creates and maintains her rye sourdough starter, all about whole grain sourdough rye, including the key differences between baking with rye and wheat, how to make 2 loaves, an everyday rye sandwich bread, and a delicious Russian-style dark rye loaf, and what to do with your sourdough discard, including video walkthroughs for sourdough pancakes and a tasty, sweet, spiced cake. Head to www.ancestralkitchen.com/rye. All right, welcome back. Let's go into processing methods. This is an interesting thing for me. We have done a tour of a roastery that Gary gets coffee beans from. And so we've toured their facility before, and it was kind of fun seeing. It's very small in the scale of coffee roasters.
Okay.
And like it's all just in, one small building. And so we've gone in and seen their big machine with the thing spinning around, moving the beans constantly.
Okay.
And then friends of mine owned a coffee roasting company out of their home, and they had this one room with a huge machine in it for roasting coffee beans on like a, still tiny in the face of it, but larger scale compared to what you're doing on a pan. And that was really cool to see too. And when they sold their business, they gave us lots of little cute like cups and things like that that we've enjoyed using. But I have never roasted my own coffee, and I'm curious to hear about the processing methods that you have here.
Well, okay, so what I meant by processing methods, processing in the notes, it was actually the stage before that. And actually this is the bit that I had to do the most research on, because I really didn't know. And it's really fascinating when you learn a bit about it. 'Cause before it gets to the roasting, it's like what happens. First of all, you pick the beans, the cherries, in fact, is what they are at that point. And then what do you do with them before they become green coffee beans that you can roast? Well, really, there's 3 ways that they're processed. One of them is the natural way, and that's what we all like on this podcast, you see. So the natural way, what they do, they just leave these cherries out in the sun to dry, and then when they're dry, the whole of the husk is removed off them, and there you have a green coffee bean, which is then collected, and someone goes away and roasts it, and we'll talk about the roasting later. The second method is called the honey method, and honey has nothing to do with actual honey. What it means is that there's a kind of sweetness to the flavor. And basically what that means is some of the husk is removed before they dry it out in the sun, but then some of it's left on. And what happens, I think really in both in the natural method and in the honey method, that husk that's left on kind of ferments. And so it goes a little bit sweet. And some of that flavor is imparted to the bean. So I think that explains to me why, like some coffees, I always used to think it was a bit in the roasting, but I realize that's not the case now. It's actually in the sourcing. Some coffees are processed with this natural or honey method, and there's sort of gradations depending on how much of the cherry you take off between it being natural or it being honey. And it makes the coffee a little bit sweet because it ferments, and then when you taste it, you get that sort of slightly sweet flavor from it, rather than just the really bitter flavors that you get from coffee. And that stays there even up to the point of it being really dark roasted. So I remember there was a cafe that I used to go to in Italy, and some of the other episodes where I talk about coffee, I go on about how the Italians just roast their coffee to death. They really do. And yeah, in this place, because I guess they were using honey roasted or even natural roasted coffee, there was a sweetness from that pulp being left on the bean to ferment while it dried. And so that sweetness came into the cup even after it had been roasted for that long. Now,
do they just roast everything? Is it?
Yeah, they roast it a lot. They really do. The Italians do such dark roasts. You think about what an Italian espresso is like. And it's really weird. Like it's funny, before I moved to Italy, with Alison, like many, sort of 15 years ago, the first time we moved there, the fashion in the UK for coffee was a long way away from that. The roasts were sort of, you might say light medium is what it felt like to me. The coffee was a sort of a browner colour, and it was bitter, but it wasn't like really dark. Coming back from Italy the last time, like last year, and most of the coffee here in this country now is like the coffee in Italy. It's like, because the style the fashion has changed that much, that it's just really, really dark. And third method of processing is the washed method. And this is basically where they remove all of the outer pulp, and the beans are sort of separated in water and then put in a water tank. And apparently the microorganisms that are naturally on the coffee, there's like enzymes there, kind of dissolve a layer off the outside, and then they're mechanically dried. And actually you can mechanically dry all three of these methods. That's another thing to remember. But then you'd lose a lot of the fermentation that would happen if you left them out in the sun. So presumably you'd lose the sweetness. See, I'm a bit vague on this. I wanted to find somebody to interview to get this a little bit clearer. But so the wash method, although it's like a modern thing and it's not the, in quotes, natural method, actually you're really just putting them in water, these beans, and leaving them there while the microorganisms on the coffee are doing their work and dissolving layers off of the bean. And then that's made possible by the fact that they can now be mechanically dried. So actually, I know like listeners here are probably pretty suspicious, like me, of modern ways of doing things, but I can't think of any reason health-wise or sustainability-wise or anything really why you choose one method over another. Maybe you choose natural or honey methods for flavor sometimes, but you'd probably say like there's less chance of animals or mold contaminating something that was washed and then naturally dried quickly compared to something that's just left out in a field, so a natural processor or a honey processor, they better really know what they're doing. Do you know what I mean? Otherwise, some animals come along and wee on your coffee, so that's the various, and you'll see now. This is the thing that when you get your coffee from a private roastery that's sort of doing things on a small scale, you'll see they've probably got one or two varieties listed that are natural method, so try them. They're sweeter. They really are sweeter, and it's lovely, especially the honey method.
How does this play into the decaf? Is that related to the growing, or is that related to the processing? Is that all in the roasting?
So,
Where do we take
they do
the goodness out of
there's two. Yeah, it's a funny one. That I mean, there's the commercial method that is used in most decaf coffee, and I wouldn't touch that with a barge pole, because basically they steam the beans to open the pores and then soak them in some solution that binds with caffeine. I don't know what chemicals are in that. I don't care. I don't want anything to do with that. And then they dry them, and then you've got your decaf coffee. Great stuff. There's the Swiss water method, and there's another one, maybe a gravity. Well, I can't remember. There's a couple of methods that are a little bit more friendly, and they basically, what they do is they soak the beans in hot water and then use activated charcoal to leach out the caffeine. It sounds pretty safe, it doesn't sound too bad. My objection to it, though, is still, I feel like we're getting a little bit too good at making coffee and making large quantities of it. So, okay, we're getting pretty good at making the caffeinated variety. But even if you take the caffeine out and go, okay, well, now I can just drink coffee with impunity the whole time. And it's got theobromine in it, which is psychoactive from chocolate that's also in coffee. Small quantities, yeah. It's got a couple of others that I won't embarrass myself by trying to pronounce on air. There's also just the smell and the taste are all acting on you the whole time, making it addictive. Coffee can raise your cholesterol, apparently, due to another thing that I can't pronounce. I wrote it here. There's just these are unfortunately details that I'm not qualified or have the patience to look up and get into in any detail. But I think on a sort of instinctive level, I feel like coffee we've got to have a sort of a symbiotic relationship with that plant, which means growing an amount of it that is not going to destroy the environment, not having to monocrop it to the point where it becomes vulnerable to diseases. And at the same time, not just that the other ingredients in that plant, other than caffeine, were not designed to be ingested in the quantities that apparently you could get away with ingesting them with caffeine. So maybe there's a place for it, but it's very expensive as well. Like the
so
Swiss
we're just
one,
focusing on take out the caffeine, but we're kind of not realizing there's other effects happening too. Yeah. That
it's a complicated crop. It really is, and there's also results of cultivating coffee in that large quantity, and maybe it's like the phrase "give us this day our daily bread." It's like our daily bread, not our thrice daily bread. That's there for, because it's actually quite hard to make bread. And believe it or not, the same thing is true of coffee. And just because we're getting so good at being so efficient at these things that we can just have like 3 or 4 cups a day. And it's like, well, great. And then, you find you can't because you got too much caffeine. All right, well, we'll pay for expensive Swiss water processed coffee, and then we can continue having 3 or 4 cups a day.
Right.
And they're just somewhere along the line, we're going to pay for it somewhere, if it's not in the farming or in something to do with our health that is not caffeine related. So I'm not a massive fan of it, leaving aside the taste, which is, they're getting better at it, but it's not going to replace the real thing,
Okay.
So, roasting.
Okay.
Roasting.
Okay, I'm curious about this part.
This is the really exciting. Oh, this is so good, right? You're gonna love this bit. Roasting today is done in a drum. It's basically a version of the 19th century tumbler invented by a Mr. Jabez Burns. That was his name.
That's insane.
Yeah, it's brilliant, isn't it? The drum rotates. It gives the beans even contact with the surface. They don't sit there kind of burning for a while at a controlled temperature. And it gives you really consistent results. And suddenly you can mass market coffee. It's also, I guess, we'll talk about, I tell you what, we'll talk about caffeine levels in the health section. Just for now, take my word for it. It's more efficient at making a higher caffeine coffee than what you would have had previously.
Okay.
So it also, at the same time as making it ready for the mass market, it also conveniently for the mass market makes it more addictive. Great stuff.
Well, that's great for sales.
Yeah. Feels really good when you drink it, though. Hey,
Right?
previous to this, I've seen 3 techniques mentioned regularly in a historical context. So putting the beans, I think listeners are going to love this one, putting the beans on a stone in the embers of a fire.
How?
Now, I know, like, you and Gary especially are like amazing at lighting fires, and we've taken advice from you on wood fires recently when we happened to move into a place that had one. I'm terrible at it, and I just cannot imagine what you would have to do to A, keep a fire lit at the right level, and B, move coffee beans around so that they didn't burn on a stone in a bunch of embers for presumably like half an hour or up.
No, keep them
Apparently
moving.
the wood smoke flavour is really nice.
Oh, well,
so that might
good
be an
point.
experiment that someone wants to try. I would love to try that if somebody fancies sending me some, or equally probably more practically, just take a photo of them and rave about them on the Discord channel somewhere.
Brag
somebody
about them.
have a yeah, exactly. Have a go at it and tell me what they taste like, because I'd really love to give that a go. The second method, which is a very well-established traditional method, which people still do today. Like, I've got a friend who was saying his mum did it throughout his whole childhood. And it's pan roasting, and it's simply a flame and a pan, and you stir them around, make sure they don't burn. And people still do that. Sometimes like per cup, they'll just put them in the pan and roast them for 15 minutes and then grind them and drink them, and yeah, we'll talk about, I have my own kind of flow for that. But I've tried a lot of different ways on sort of electric hobs and gas hobs and things like that. So I'm hopefully going to give in the after show for supporters just a really detailed description of how to construct your own flow with this, rather than faffing about with it, breaking beans and stoves alike.
You've never done any of that,
and grinders, in fact, when you don't roast them enough, all sorts of things go wrong. And
I remember that's one of the first things I remember Alison telling me about, was how she said, if you're going to grind these beans, green beans, because you make her green coffee sometimes, don't you?
Yeah, Alison,
and she said it's really difficult.
Used to make green coffee for quite some time, and yeah, she's broken a few grinders. In
She told me that.
But also like the ones that you can do a much lighter roast that's more like the green beans, and they're a lot harder to grind as well. And you need something pretty heavy duty really to have a good fight with those beans, because green beans are so hard. Oh my goodness,
Explains why it was goats eating them then. In the beginning.
I think a goat is pretty much the only animal in existence that would A, be able to do that,
down.
and B, would persist at it. It's just like, it's just food, crunch.
Goodness.
Yeah. Last idea, metal cylinders with holes in them. Apparently you can rotate them over a fire, and that was done probably, it's a kind of like a precursor to the drum roast that we use more efficiently these days.
Is this metal cylinder with a hole in it, you're alluding to something that someone can do, or it's a method?
They've got lots of little holes in it. So basically, I think the idea is you've got your fire, like your flame, like you would with a pan, but you've got all your beans in like a sort of a drum that just has lots of little holes, like a sieve or a colander or something, but not big enough for the beans to go through. And so the cylinder rotates, and they all roll around inside it, so they never get, like, because they get turned round and tipped, they never sit there and burn over the flame, if you see what I mean.
Okay.
And that seems like a really cool idea. I mean, I could almost build one of them actually.
Oh, that'd be actually really fun to do.
It might,
and just have Gabriel do it.
Just a little bit less efficient maybe than the drum, which is possibly quite a nice thing. I mean, the nice thing about pan roasting, right, is that your pan, like a cast iron pan, that's what I use, and putting something on a pan and roasting it like that, and frying it like that, it imparts a sort of biscuity kind of toasty flavour. And you just, for whatever reason, you just don't really get that from a drum. At least I never have from any roastery that I've bought coffee from. They can roast very, very evenly. They can roast and probably do a better job of not burning it than me, honestly, because I'll be there roasting and I'll be like reading something while I'm doing it or whatever.
Yeah.
Like the worst one, if I do my accounts, that's the worst one actually. And then I just end up with this burnt mass of beans at the end of it because I just didn't stir them properly. So it responds really well to turning them really carefully. But you can turn them really carefully and you get this lovely kind of crispy flavour that you do not get from a drum roast. And that can be a really positive thing. And you miss that from commercial roasteries. And in the after show, as I say, we'll talk about it, how to make a lighter, lower caffeine, less addictive brew with lots of interesting flavours in it.
Okay, so you've kind of told us a bit about growing. We've got our opinions now. You shared somewhat on the processing, the natural, the honey, the washed, and then you talked about the roasting. So everybody's cracking out their stone and building the fire. So now that we've got our roasted beans going, or we're choosing to not roast them and break our blender.
Well, yeah, that's that. Yeah.
Let's take a quick break and come back, and maybe you can talk about brewing when we get back.
Cool.
Do you love oats? Want to try your hand at a traditional Scottish oat fermentation? Suans is just that. It was made in Scotland for centuries and will give you both a creamy, easy-to-digest porridge and a tangy probiotic drink. My video course, Suans, the Scottish Oat Ferment, over at the Fermentation School, will guide you through everything you need to know to create these two ancestral foods in your own kitchen, no matter what equipment you have. Head to ancestralkitchen.com/Suans, ancestralkitchen.com/Suans, SOWANS, or click the link in the show notes to get a 10% discount automatically applied.
Okay, so brewing coffee. This is where the opinions are going to start turning up too.
Well, this comes down to taste more. There's some maybe health in considerations there, but it's more, it does come down more to taste. So there's a bunch of options, it's not so bad. Okay. But there'll definitely be opinions on that, I'm sure. But the simplest one is just to pour hot water over your ground coffee beans through some kind of a sieve or muslin or something like that. And the water that comes out underneath.
I have a question about
you're gonna
that.
say.
Do you meant, when we were talking about that caffeine, I meant to ask you, and it works here too. When we did the episode on tea, Megan told me that she would brew tea again and it would have less caffeine in it. Do people brew coffee again, or is that a thing?
Yeah. I mean, I guess the thing with it'll have less caffeine in it, it applies to coffee as much as it applies to tea, I would imagine. Not that I've ever been able to scientifically measure it. But I'd say it probably does, because Swiss water method is basically using water to wash out the caffeine. So I think it probably does work. But yeah, so do you use coffee? But yeah, I've heard that possibly the Turkish they have like a different name for each brew of the coffee. So you start off with the strong one at the beginning, then you have the second one, then the third one, and the fourth one's almost water, basically. And I've gone through phases of second brewing my coffee and flavoring it as well. We'll talk about that in the after show. But yeah, you do. I mean, you can pour on the coffee again. I tell you what, they used to use coffee grinds as a kind of medicinal thing. So they'd have people eating coffee grinds or coffee that hadn't had water poured over it. like as a kind of medicinal tonic in like
eating
16th, 17th century. Yeah. Either ground coffee, like literally eating it medicinally, horrible stuff, or eating the grinds afterwards. And it's funny because I heard, I found that in my research somewhere along the line to my shock, but I heard some doctor on one of the kind of health / medical, slightly woo-woo new age podcasts that I listen to, talking about how he just eats like a tablespoon of coffee grinds every day because he's just convinced that from studies that they will do him X, Y, and Z good things for his health. And I can't recall what they were, but coffee grinds taste horrible. They really do taste horrible. And it's like, yeah, I'm not doing it for the fun of it. I just think, so it's,
but I'm only here for the fun of it. So like health benefits, I'm happy to hear about, but
yeah, I do
mostly
kind of feel
I'm
like
for
that
the
myself.
Entertainment of coffee.
Yeah. So, but definitely, you can brew your coffee again, and you will get a lighter, less caffeinated drink, and it's fine. And it also, I think it depends a bit on how long you leave your coffee brewing the first time. Like if you only leave it for 2 or 3 minutes, you're going to have a stronger cup the second time. You know,
right? So that you're talking like in a percolator or something where it like sits.
Oh yeah, so it depends. What I'm talking about, a French press,
okay,
or cafetiere, depending on which side of the Atlantic. I can't remember which way around it is either. I call it a cafetiere, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything.
We say French press over here.
You do, okay?
Because we like to attach French onto things so that we sound.
Yeah. Well, cafetiere is a. I believe that would be a French word. It doesn't quite fit with Italian for me. So
I didn't say we actually use French words. We just like to attach French. Like French fries.
Yeah, well, that in a way that illustrates it, doesn't it? Because instead of saying cafetiere, you said French press. But anyway, so pour over coffee. That's the simplest one, apparently. Although it's really quite skilled because you have to pour the coffee extremely slowly over the coffee through some sort of a filter to get a result. And that's like really quite a skilled thing. And that, again, like for me, that comes back to the sort of what we've done to coffee kind of thing, that we've made it more and more convenient. So now instead of that, press your button on your espresso maker. Bing. It's like the microwave finished.
Like set the timer
and
on
it just
too, right?
And it makes it really easy. And then people are so sad that they're addicted to it, you know? And it's like, well, you've made it so easy. It's not surprising, is it, really? So yeah, pour over coffee. It's easy in a way, but it also takes a fair bit of skill to pour it slowly and patience to pour it slowly enough to get some nice
Gary
coffee
uses,
out of
it. He has like this copper kettle with it's called a gooseneck, right? It has like a long stem or whatever spout when he makes his pour over. And I actually did not myself start drinking coffee until very recently. Like I had it every once in a while, but I didn't really drink it very often. And I started because we got a different French press and it was slightly larger than the one we had before. And I would make Gary's coffee every morning or every afternoon, depending on what shift he was on before he left for work. And then there'd be like 2 or 3 ounces left over. So I started drinking it.
After
he left, I was like, oh.
You mean you swap between the pour over and having a French press? Was that the...
Well, he got the bigger French press, and then around that time he also got he had 2 different sizes. Then I accidentally broke his pour over by knocking it off the counter.
Okay.
And it wasn't passive aggressive, I promise.
Yeah.
And then he's had the one he's had now, and then he's just still had the same, like it's a cloth, like you said, muslin or whatever that you put in the top. It's still the same one.
Is that a sort of an automated? Is that an automated rate of dripping, or is it him having to pour it over manually? Sorry, I'm just really curious. So.
Yeah, no, this one, it's called a Chemex, I think is how it's said, and it's like a glass, like a globe on the top and a kind of spout on the. I don't know how to describe it. Everybody just Google it. They know what I'm talking about. And you pour it over with the gooseneck. So he was either using that or the French press. Then,
Then
right
you went
before
to
the baby was born. And then we moved to the big French press, and then there started being like 2 or 3 ounces left over, and I was like, "Oh, this is nice," and I have it with like some milk or whatever. So like So I like having it, but I don't think I tolerate very much. I don't know if you build a tolerance or something, but like I don't think
you do.
It doesn't take as much to get me going,
Yeah.
I guess you would say. But then right after the baby was born, he got this called a Mocha Master, where
Okay.
it is a button that you push. So you put in the water, and then you have the grounds in like this drip thing, and then it like slowly drips the water over the grounds
Yeah. Okay.
into the pot, and then it keeps it
Maybe we
hot.
call that a percolator over here.
Yeah, I don't know what it.
I haven't
really
had
know.
one since I was like 20 years ago, but
I don't actually know what any of it's really called, but so he uses that most of the time now, and we got that because I was trying to find all the steps that I was usually involved in, and eliminating myself from the picture as much as possible, so that with the baby, then I could make his breakfast and coffee and stuff easily while he was working, and not have to stand there and pour coffee for like 25 minutes or whatever.
Yeah, that's crazy, isn't it? Yeah. Does
Yeah,
he
it's
prefer
kind of
Does he prefer the pour over or drip, whether automated or not, to a French press? So I'm curious. Does he like the flavour?
Well, it's funny. What he says is, he says he really enjoys making like a really nice, like he has a stovetop espresso maker, or the stainless steel Bialetti for making espresso as well. He really enjoys making special cups of coffee, but he also was in the Navy, and he'll drink like dredge coffee out of like a machine that sat there for 6 hours or whatever, and just for the sake of the caffeine. So he's like, I don't know. He's like, I really enjoy a nice cup of coffee, but I also like, I'll just drink it if I need to, just to get through the day. So he's like, I'm this weird mix of, I enjoy things to be nice, but then also he'll take the bottom of the barrel if he has to. So as to which one he prefers, I don't know. He would probably say he prefers the pour over. Yeah. If I asked him.
I mean,
that'd be my guess.
That's the ancestral way of doing it.
My preference is espresso. I like the espresso best.
Okay. And what do you do with the espresso? Do you bolt it down, or you put some cream with it, or how does that
bolt it down? Well, I either bolt it down or...
See, I sip espresso.
I like it with...
Right? Because I just can't... I maybe put a little bit of, I don't know, water, or if I'm in a cafe, I sometimes ask for coconut milk or whatever, just something to make it a little bit longer. And then I just sit there sipping it, which Italians thought I was crazy. I mean, they're just like, what? Because they just walk in, literally bolt it down, and then walk out again. And that's their relationship with coffee shops, you know.
I don't know. I think some of my, maybe Alison and I should do an episode on this and unpack this. Some of my eating habits are based on either coming from a big family and having to quickly get the resources before they're gone, or knowing that the drink's going to be cold if I don't drink it right now, because I'm going to get called away to a baby or something, and it's not going to be there when I come back.
Okay.
So I don't know. Yeah, sometimes I feel like I either drink it really quickly, my coffee, or I take a little sip, and then 3 hours later I'm like, oh look, this is still here. I probably should have drank that while it was hot.
Yeah, so I mean, we got the pour over is like the traditional way of doing it, and if you can automate that with a machine, well, great, you just save yourself a bunch of time. French press thing. I mean, I love my French press because you can very easily stick a bit more water in there and get a second cup. And maybe flavor that cup with something, maybe to make it. You know,
I like the French press a lot.
Yeah, exactly. And also I use it for making tea as well, like herbal teas and things like that, and just take the coffee out, and it makes a perfectly good tea maker as well. So I'm very happy with that. Espresso, basically forcing very, very hot water, bordering on steam through coffee. Mocha pot is just forcing it at a lower pressure, effectively. So you can it's doing the same thing on a stove, basically.
Right.
The odd one for me is Americano. That I've never really understood what goes on with this. First of all, there's an Americano and there's a long black. And apparently Americano is pouring water onto an espresso, and long black is pouring espresso onto water. It's like, well, whatever.
Whatever.
I can do weird hyperfocus, but that's just ridiculous.
That's just too much.
Yeah,
you know where the Americano name came from?
Tell the story.
Well, I just happened to have read this forever ago. So you can tell me if it's wrong, but that when the Americans were in Italy during the war, they didn't like the dark roasted, super strong espressos. So they would always ask, "Could you add water to this, please?" And so they called it Americanos.
That I have heard. I knew I'd heard it before, but I couldn't remember what it was. That's why I threw it on you. Yeah, that sounds exactly right, because that's exactly what I did in Italy. The weird thing about it is, it's like maybe they're just Italian Americanos just always seem really lame to me. They really do seem like something that's been watered down, and they're much more their Americanos are actually in the end much more satisfying as a espresso, or they do a thing called macchiato, which is like it's a bit of milk with it. Basically, it's a espresso with a little bit of milk, and to me they're a lot more satisfying than their Americanos, even though I prefer my coffee long. In the UK, can always long as in lots of water in it. But in the UK, you can drink these kind of massive long coffees that are satisfying, and it makes me think in the UK they must be doing like double, triple shots or something to make it really satisfying with these massive kind of, I don't know, like 16-ounce cut mugs. I'm not even sure what they are, but they're enormous. Incredible amount of caffeine in those things.
I wonder, baristas, mail in and tell us, please, because if I get a drink at a coffee place, which probably like you, we don't do that very often, but if I go somewhere, then what I'm going to ask for is typically going to be an Americano with cream, or a breve. Someone just told me the other day is a better name for it. I don't.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. This is the thing, though. If we ran out of our interest in the French, now we just make everything Italian, and then it sounds like a true coffee or something. But anyways, I always get the smallest cup that they have. But when I order for Gary, then he always wants a triple shot Americano with cream. I think he always drinks just black coffee at home, but when we go somewhere, that's what I'm trying.
So he needs the triple shot to make it long enough to be of any interest.
I think that's what it is, because if I have ever said a 16-ounce Americano, then they say, and do you want the extra shots? And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about, but whatever it is, then yeah, sure. Whatever it normally is. If I drink that, I would probably be vibrating off the walls and like not be able to sit anymore.
That has some very obvious physiological effects, doesn't it? Yeah.
But Gary will drink it and then go take a nap. So I don't know what that means.
Oh, well,
that's adrenals, but
that's entirely the fact that I guess that it takes half an hour for the caffeine to kick in anyway. Okay. So what'll happen is he'll actually wake up from that nap, which is probably quite convenient. He doesn't want to go to sleep for half the day and then not do anything the rest of the day. He's thinking of having a nap, So he finishes his coffee and then he's got half an hour to nap, and then it starts to kick in, and then after another 15 minutes, he's going to be awake no matter what. So that
makes sense.
That's a biohack, that is, and that, that's really cool. I like that.
For Gary, it's difficult because he's always trying his circadian rhythm. There's no regularity to it. Like him and my midwife always chuckle that they have the same schedule because they just never know when they're going to be awake and when they're going to be asleep. And
is that his work though, that's done that basically?
Yeah, that's his work. So he's up and down all the time. So he'll just sort of kind of drink coffee steadily throughout his awake time is.
Oh, I do think, coffee is, I'm not sure. I don't know, maybe you can concentrate a bit better, maybe you're a bit more alert, but I think, most of that, maybe all of that, but certainly most of that is you just feel so lousy from not having your coffee that you need it in order to feel okay. So it really, like, actually what you're getting from coffee is a way of being able to sort of manhandle those periods when you're awake. So, like, regular listeners and friends of Alison and that sort of thing will know that I have two kind of work incomes in my life. One of them is computing and one of them is music. And the computing one, I'm up at 5 a.m. and as soon as I've done my various sort of morning things, I'm sat down at the computer and I'm doing some computer stuff before Gabriel awakes and we do some homeschooling. The music one, often it involves being out very, very late at night. And
interesting.
So, you know, those two schedules just do not work at all. And the thing is, what I can do, the solution is not more coffee. What the solution is that on the days where I'm going to have to be out very, very late at night, I have my coffee mid to late afternoon, even early evening. And then I'm very much awake and able to do whatever I need to do until like midnight, 2 a.m., no problem. And then, okay, the next morning I feel like rubbish, obviously. So somewhere I've got to catch up. But the thing is, whereas on a day where I've got to do things earlier in the day, I'll have the coffee earlier in the day and therefore I'll be able to sleep better at the end of it. And it's just sort of, it's a really effective way of managing the times when you're functioning and you're not functioning so much. But if I'm tired and a bit dopey when I'm reading to Alison and Gabriel late in the evening, it's not really a problem. I just read to them and I'm a bit tired and dopey. Right. So I would suspect like Gary's got something similar going on, that if he has to work shifts and really like there's times he's just got to be awake, it's like you hammer in the coffee to do those things. And then the times when you can get away with being all dopey, that's fine, you know?
Yeah.
But
he does feel like he doesn't want to always be forcing himself to basically be awake. So the downside for him is that he feels like when he has a day when he doesn't have to go to work, he feels like he spends a lot of his time feeling groggy and dopey because he doesn't want to just force himself to be awake, but also he can't. Yeah, so it's a little bit of a push and pull. And I know I'll shout out Leah on this too. She's a girl who loves her coffee, and she's got 3 little kids. And when your little children aren't sleeping, but somehow, or they're not all sleeping at the same time, but you have to be conscious because you have little children in the house and you can't just go take a nap. You kind of just have to propel yourself through the day somehow, and that's another challenge that I know a lot of moms run into is, the baby was up all night, but then I have, 4 other kids that I need to teach school during the day. And I'm the person who's not sleeping in this equation.
Well, it is, I mean, coming back to Italian coffee habits, they do, you see most of them, I think something like, I can't remember if it's 3/4 or 4/5 of Italians drink 3 coffees a day. And you hear that and you're like, oh my goodness, how are they doing that? And it's really strong coffee as well, like proper. Wow. But they're drinking espresso. And they're drinking, most of them, as far as I could see from people's habits, are drinking 1 shot. So 3 1-shot espressos throughout a day, like 1 in the morning, 1 at lunchtime, 1 in the afternoon, as compared to probably an English person would be there having a double shot in a long coffee, maybe we're theorizing. But they're only doing that once. Yeah, well, exactly, with a load of milk and sugar or whatever. I mean, I wonder what they're really addicted to when you get to that. And then sort of struggling with some days, I need a second one, and then other days. It's actually not really as different. It's just a different kind of pattern of drinking. Although I suppose there's more people who don't drink coffee and are habitual tea drinkers and that kind of thing, certainly in the UK. But yeah, I wonder whether maybe for a mother with a child who's just got to be alert, maybe the three little coffees pattern is actually quite useful, because then you're just going to be alert throughout the day.
That's a good idea.
Whereas, provided they sleep at night, can't help you with that, I'm afraid.
Right.
Whereas for someone like me, it's like 1 coffee in the morning and then it'll have completely worn off by the evening, and that's lovely. On the days I have to stay up really late, 1 coffee late in the afternoon, then I can stay up late enough. And then the worst, actually, getting onto the health thing, which we'll do next, the worst thing I can do is then on the day when I'm groggy and tired, like you were describing with Gary, is then have some coffee as well on that day, because then I feel really lousy. It's quite amazing how bad you can make yourself feel with caffeine when you actually need it. It's a serious problem. I think caffeine is great in some ways as long as you don't need it, basically. And it's a great way of moving that need for sleep around the day at will a little bit. There was another note here about cold brew. Just leave the thing in cold water overnight. It doesn't seem to be more complicated than that. I know. I tried it a few times.
I love cold brew. So
really? Oh wow! Can you do this bit better than I can, though.
My two favorites would be espresso or cold brew, and I feel like cold brew, there's like this really silky smoothness to it that I just prefer. So when I read about it, it takes a lot of coffee grounds, like more than when you do hot. So I grind it, like weigh it and grind it, and then what I read was you pour through one quick dose of hot, like boiling hot water. So it's wetted with hot water, and then you fill it with the cold, and then I put it in the fridge or leave it in the sun for like 8 hours or whatever. And then when you strain it out, oh my goodness, it is just so. I love it. I love it more than the hot brewed, but it takes a long time and a lot of and a lot of grounds, and then I always feel kind of like, oh, I shouldn't be using so much of this coffee just for me, so I don't end up making a whole lot of it, but I do like that. And I
tried it once years and years ago. You're inspiring me to do it again, actually.
I had also heard that it was lower in caffeine, which I don't know if that's accurate or not. That's just something I heard. And I got an insert I have one that fits a quart jar and one that fits a half-gallon jar. I don't know what the equivalents would be over there.
Okay.
But they just like drop down inside like an infuser or something. So you could put herbs in them. And I've done that before. Like you do herbs or fruit or peels of, citrus or whatever if you wanted to make some kind of a different tea. So you could use them for lots of things, kind of like the French press. But no, I just make the cold brew in that. And then once it's all brewed, I just kind of decant it into whatever I'm going to be pouring it out of and keep it in the fridge for, I don't know, like a week or whatever, however long it takes for me to drink it.
That does sound really good. It is. It's 29 degrees here at the moment, which for the UK is like stonkingly hot. It's honestly that I would have called that cool last year, where I was. But it's making
it's all relative.
Coffee sound really good. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, cold brew over a couple pieces of ice and then some cream poured on top is pretty much peak summer for me.
Yeah. That sounds great. So, you know what? We found a source of raw milk now, so maybe I can get cream from them, like Jersey cows. Yeah. And
if you can get, if they're Jersey cows, if you can just get unseparated milk, then you'd have like.
Then we got some cream, haven't we?
Yeah, you've got a fair amount of cream on top of every jar of milk. So is coffee healthy? Tell us. You know that on this podcast we're all about blanket statements and unequivocation.
Oh yeah. Okay, so let's completely miss all the nuance. Maybe.
Yeah, we don't like nuance.
Sometimes
we're not an hour into this podcast because you like nuance.
Yeah, I'm not very good at that. Okay, so I can't summarize things into one. But this is one of those things you can't really summarize into one small sentence, unfortunately. I mean, okay, so once let's say that you've got the sourcing and the preparation right, so there's not going to be any mold issues from where you're getting it from. Let's say that you're roasting it nicely so that there's not any burn on it or anything like that. There's no pesticides in the farming. And once you've got through those basics, so it's nice and fresh as well. It's not been sitting around for ages. Then you get into just really your consumption patterns and how it interacts with your own body. And I mean, what coffee does is it blocks the receptors for the chemicals that make you sleepy. So you don't know that you're sleepy. That's the first thing it does. You are sleepy, but you don't know it. And also, it gives you a little stimulant that is quite good for helping you concentrate. It's a bit of an upper. I mean, the reason I didn't drink coffee for like 10, 15 years or something after university. And I used to absolutely love it at university, but I went into a sort of a narcissistic health drive tunnel that lasted a good decade or so. And coming out of that, I just felt like, I know how much I enjoy this. I want to start drinking this again, and I don't care whether it's healthy anymore. That was kind of the way that I felt about it. And what it did for me was it felt like an antidepressant. And I quickly went from 1 coffee a week to 2 coffees a week to 5 coffees a week to every day until usually what happens is I'll get sick or something, and then coffee won't taste very nice, and I'll stop drinking it for a couple of weeks. And invariably, Alison and Gabriel will petition me to start drinking it again because they say I'm a miserable meanie without caffeine in my system. And so then I start
take your drugs
again, and then I'm back to no, seriously, that's what it is. It is, and I feel like it's an upper for me, basically. And apparently, it's one of those things. It's really insidious as an upper, in the sense that you do. It's not like, when you drink alcohol, you're a bit tipsy, you're a bit drunk, it's really obvious. Whereas it's not quite so noticeable. It doesn't change your personality. It doesn't sort of alter your speech so that you're all slurred or whatever. It's very much, it happens in the background. You just feel more alert and maybe in my case, I would say happier. The thing is, though, when you stop it, okay, you get all the withdrawal symptoms or whatever. But what you never get is that you can be off it for like 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and you still don't really feel like yourself, because if you've been taking this caffeine for years, certainly in the quantities that you get it in coffee, the background hum of your mind is caffeinated, and suddenly when you're without it, you really miss it. And so, I mean, I did go into it sort of with my eyes open, that I was like, I'm going to be properly addicted to this, so I'm going to try and make it healthy. And also, really half the thing with the pan roasting is actually try to make it hard enough for myself to drink it, that I'm not going to drink that much of it that I'm ever going to be totally addictive. So it's a pain having to roast. I get a couple of packets from the roastery as a treat. They sent me a couple of extra packets as well this time by mistake, and so I've been drinking the sort of properly roasted coffee for quite some time now, and it is so compulsive and addictive. It's the more efficient and caffeinated you make it. So probably I should explain about the caffeine, right? Dark roasts are more high in caffeine than light roasts, and that seems logical. You sort of feel that intuitively, but it's actually I wrote it out here because it's such a odd. Okay. So, where did I write it? And this is the moment where because I wrote it out nicely, and now I'm just going to have to remember it. Never mind, I can't find it. Okay, well, it's basically that when you've got caffeine in a green bean, what happens is when you dry it, that bean is going to get lighter and lighter. So if you were to make a cup of coffee with beans that have been only very, very lightly roasted, then they've not lost much of their water content. So if you use the same volume of beans for that lightly roasted cup as you do for a heavily roasted cup that's lost lots and lots of water, bean for bean, you're going to find that there's more caffeine, in fact, in the light roasted one, because funnily enough, the roasting process bean for bean is going to lose you caffeine, but because it loses so much water for weight rather than volume, there's a ton more beans in the heavily roasted one. And so the heavily roasted coffee is therefore going to have significantly more caffeine in it. And
I see.
Yeah.
So if you're saying I've got, 10 beans then you can maximize your caffeine in those, and it wouldn't actually be by roasting it darker. But if you said, I can have an ounce.
The thing is, then you need 20.
Yeah. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying. Oh, how interesting.
And so, I mean, caffeine itself has, if you Google the health effects, it has a ton of really positive effects. I suspect, to be honest, they're mostly written by people who are addicted to caffeine and are just willing it to be healthy. They're just like, oh, it's got to be good. It's got to be good. Please let it be good. But I think it probably does. And I think for me, I mean, the chief health effect is that thing of being able to kind of manipulate the times when I'm awake and the times I'm not. And as long as I don't try to do an activity that requires me to be really, really alert and awake when I'm not, on the groggy day, basically, or on the groggy part of the day, then I'm actually fine. I'm just, okay, I'm used to, this is the part of the day where my mind's not caffeine in it. And so I like really having my caffeine early in the day, because then I just do the things I can be dozy with at the end of the day. I usually have like one fairly small cup of Earl Grey tea as well somewhere else in the day, which has unbelievably less caffeine than most coffee does, I believe. It's incredible, like when you see the difference, and certainly with the stronger ones. So yeah, I'm bunching it up earlier in the day seems to work for me, but I can imagine for some people it might be better to sort of spread it out. Right. In terms of negative effects, I mean, I think the point about it is if you're abusing it, then there is a problem. Because like I said, it makes you no longer aware that you're sleepy. So if your body is sending you signals like, you're sleepy, really, really, time to sleep now, time to sleep, please. And there's going to be all sorts of things that are going wrong at that point. And if you're using caffeine to ignore them, then you're going to be causing yourself some serious problems.
That makes sense, because I'm thinking of, like when somebody takes a pain pill because their back is hurting, like in one sense that might help you get home and get to bed or whatever. But if you're taking the pain pill and then you're just continuing to lift boxes or something,
it's exactly that. It's exactly
all
that.
The signals are being ignored.
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole thing with caffeine is that it's when you used to have to do all of that farming. You've got to grow your beans, then you've got to ferment your beans and dry them and get all the pulp off them. Then you've got to roast them, and roasting involved a pan and turning them round and round and round. And then you've got to brew them, and brew them involved pouring some very hot water very slowly over it. And you know
had
what?
To start a fire. You had to get the fire
and the roasting,
going.
Exactly, yeah. And doing it in the fire with the embers and that thing. And the roasting, being as it was less efficient, and so there was less caffeine in it, so it was less addictive. There's a balance. Yeah. Somewhere along the line, you're going to go, I think I'm going to spend some time with my family, or I don't know, do something else other than feed my addiction to coffee. The balance. Yeah. Whereas now it's kind of like the thing of having a cupboard full of like chocolate bars or candy bars or whatever. They're just there and they're within reach, and it's like, bang, I've got it. It's so easy to become addicted to really concentrated caffeine now, and I think that's why all of these ancestral methods, even if you weren't convinced that they made the thing healthier in itself, what they do is they force a kind of balance to your relationship with this substance that is incredibly addictive, because you just have to spend so much money and time in getting to that cup that you're not going to overconsume it and cause yourself harm. You're just not going to do it, because it takes too much effort.
Yeah. Well, it's the equation that I always use with sugar, which is like glucose and sugar. They're so hard to get in the natural environment. If you wanted honey, you had to climb a tree and survive all the bee stings and bring down the comb and chew the honey out of the beeswax. It wasn't so easy as just opening a bucket, which is what I do now, and just scooping honey out. And if you wanted sugar, not only is the sugar available, but it's refined more and more and more, to the point that the body has nothing to do but just receive it, mainlined. And I always tell people, buy really, really high quality sweet ingredients when you're making your cookies and things. And they say, but it makes the cookies really expensive. To which I say, yeah, that's introducing the natural balance, because then you can't eat 12 of them. You're like, oh, everybody gets one, and then they're gone. But then you feel like you're restoring a little bit of that natural order.
Yeah.
In that
it's sense. The same with all these things. Like once we do our modern Westerner thing of just mastering them and dominating them so we can just have them
entertainment.
On tap. And what we get in return is we're addicted to them and we're dependent on them.
Yeah. Instead of you have to get up, roll the rug back, somebody's got to play the fiddle and you got to dance, and now you all are entertained. Yeah,
exactly.
It's like
make up a story.
Somebody has to sit there and tell a story while you feed them mead to keep them going. Now it's just kind of flop down and push the button in the isolation of your room and watch some story of, really expensive scene being acted out that you had nothing to do with, and just be entertained. It's crazy.
So I had a great section on hydration. This is what the artificial intelligence in my web browser has to say about coffee and hydration. It's really good. It's great. Coffee is often thought to dehydrate you due to its caffeine content, which acts as a mild diuretic, increasing urine production. However, studies show that for regular coffee drinkers, the diuretic effects are minimal and do not lead to significant dehydration. Coffee contains about 98% water, so a moderate amount of coffee can contribute to your daily fluid intake without causing dehydration. For habitual coffee drinkers, the body builds a tolerance to caffeine within 1 to 4 days, reducing the diuretic effects. Additionally, the amount of fluid lost through increased urine production is generally offset by the water content in the coffee. Isn't the AI clever? I kind of wanted to ask it, actually, is that 98% water in an espresso or in an Americano?
Good question.
But my browser AI isn't that clever. So
maybe they just mean like the pour over coffee or whatever. But I have heard that actually recently. I've heard, in the sort of healthosphere, when people are talking about hydration and everything, they've said you need to start counting your coffee and tea intake towards your hydration, which is kind of funny because we were always told don't count the coffee and tea towards hydration.
I think it's a bit, in a way, I think it's probably more complicated than that. I think the nice thing, if you put milk with it, your body will probably assimilate that liquid quite well. And so that will be more hydrating than it having just been water to some extent. But it depends how much water you're drinking besides that and how much you're eating. Those things are kind of complicated and subtle depending on what your body's having to deal with aside from it. Also, I think that, the ideal, right, would be to down your espresso and then just be sipping water throughout the rest of the morning. Because then you'll assimilate that water quite well because you're sipping it in little bits and your body will assimilate it. Whereas I got to a stage at one point where I was fairly rapidly drinking quite a long coffee with a lot of water. And I think that's like the worst scenario in a sense, because, and especially if you're really thirsty, because what you're doing essentially is you're getting all the diuretic effects all in one go. You're drinking all that liquid in one go, so you're probably not actually absorbing very much of it. And so it is dehydrating. And, for a long coffee, you got to think, well, if that stops you drinking other water that's not having a dehydrating effect as well, it might not dehydrate you, but it might stop you drinking because you're like, oh, I've drunk enough now. So I'm not going to drink anything that is going to hydrate me. So it's got
to get your electrolytes.
This is why I've started drinking chicken stock or beef stock or whatever first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
And so if I've drunk that and then, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours later, I have a coffee, that means that when I get to the coffee, I'm perfectly hydrated. So it's not going to ever push me into dehydration. Because I think I really was actually pushing myself into dehydration having it first thing.
See that?
And I suppose I have also heard people who know a lot more about health than I do talking about letting the body wake up of its own accord in the morning rather than giving it a jolt. in order to get it going. I hit a point at one point when I was doing like Wim Hof breathing, freezing cold shower, and drinking a big coffee to basically give myself a big kick up the arse into action so I could get on with my day. And it's not, if you're needing that in order to do whatever it is you're doing, then maybe that isn't a sustainable scenario. It certainly wasn't for me, I think.
There's your difference between listening to the productivity podcast and the health podcast. Just like, maybe get all the action out of it and, live hard, die young. And the other one is like, can we make this last?
I want a nice life. I just want a nice life. That's all I want now.
Is it too much to ask?
I used to have a lot of other desires, lots and lots of them, but now just make it peaceful and nice. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, what else is there really that's
coffee can be a part of that. Coffee can somehow.
Oh, I'm good to hear. Or I'm glad to hear. That's good to hear. Let's try to say two sentences at the same time. Well, then that is, I suppose the next thing to ask about would be the coffee roasting, but we'll take that to the after show.
Yeah. Yeah.
And was there anything else you wanted to put on the main feed about the coffee situation?
No, nothing at all.
Okay.
That is everything. And yeah, in the after show we talk about the pan roasting technique and also some fun flavors and some things you can do with coffee, flavoring other drinks.
Great.
So if anyone wants to join as a supporter of the podcast, or if they already are, then they can listen to that.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, thanks, Rob. This was really cool. And I appreciate you taking the time, putting together the detailed notes and answering all the questions. And
it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I can't help it. Hyper-focus, remember? Yeah. It was fun. Thanks for having me on.
You bet. If you'd like to support the podcast, you can join as a patron. Choose from various levels starting at $5. You can see what we offer at ancestralkitchenpodcast.com.
While you're there, check out our favourite books, supplements and kitchenware, or give a one-time donation.
Leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts.
And if you know someone who would love our show, tell them about us.
You are helping to bring ancestral food wisdom into modern kitchens, changing the world one plate at a time.